Gary Jones, welcome to the Springs. We're really glad that you're joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for doing this. Gary, you are the assistant dean at Oklahoma Christian University, dean of students, and you also serve as the co-chair on the Committee for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Oklahoma Christian. And so we're really grateful that you're here to talk with us about the Tulsa Race Massacre. You also are at the Eastside Church of Christ, and you serve as an assistant minister.
Absolutely.
Would you tell us a little bit about Eastside, that church community, and the community that you guys serve?
Definitely. We are a small church on the corner of Northeast 36th and Prospect, just off from Martin Luther King on the east side. Great community. The church has been there for over 60 years. We are in the heart of the east side, and so it's a lower socioeconomic area, but it is a thriving area. It is a changing area. We're starting to see a lot of social development, I guess we'll call it, happening around us. Some of the housing complexes across the street from us are now being changed into studio apartments and things like that. And so who we've been is having to change a little bit as we try to minister to that neighborhood through gentrification as well.
So in 1921, from May 31st to June 1st, a mob of white men entered the Greenwood district in Tulsa, which is also known as the Black Wall Street. They murdered black people. An incredible amount of violence. Property was destroyed. They even used a private airplane to fly over that district and drop bombs, killing people, destroying property, causing an immense amount of suffering. So as we come upon the 100-year anniversary of what has become known as the Tulsa Race Massacre, what does this event mean to you and to the community that you serve?
That's a great question. I think that it means a lot, and I'm not quite sure it can be put into words adequately. You mentioned the powerful visual, even for us mentally, of a plane, right, dropping bombs on our own citizens. Interestingly enough, that only happens twice in our country's history. It's in Tulsa and in Philadelphia, both in race riots. But it means a lot to us because of, I think, the current situation that we find ourselves in. Black Wall Street represented black wealth, black generational wealth. It represented black excellence. And the destruction of Greenwood was not just, we were mad at black people for this incident that allegedly happened, but it was to destroy a system. Right, it was to destroy these people that had gotten out of control. They were self-contained, and so it's a two-sided coin. One side of the coin is it represents acknowledgement, right, of what took place. We know that we don't have a great track record of doing that. We can look at the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and see that. But the other side of their coin is it represents some hope for us. It represents what could become. We have no model of generational wealth amongst our community. If you look at the Michael Jordans and the Oprah Winfreys, they all came from poor beginnings. And so to understand that it is possible for us in this country, it's a balance. It's a balance of anger and despair, but also of hope and what Du Bois calls the double consciousness of what could become.
For people that don't know much about the Tulsa Race Massacre, I often hear them ask the question, why does this matter? Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter to me? So for someone that doesn't attend a church like Eastside, why is this important?
Yeah, it's really important. I think I can make the argument, Ben, it should be even more important to you. I believe wholeheartedly the systems don't change until those who benefit from systems make the decision that the benefit that they derive from the system isn't as important as changing the system, right? And so I think it's even more important to you because at some point, I need you to understand that when it means something to you, life changes for me. I know this is overly simplistic, but it's probably the best way to describe it. Slavery doesn't end because black people got tired of working, right? A white guy said to another white guy, listen, this is wrong, and I'll fight you over it. Now, the motives probably are a little, debatable, but someone who benefited from the system decided to change it. And so this is really important. And I think it should be important to us as people of faith, because we have to stop looking at it as the Tulsa Race Massacre or as the Tuskegee syphilis experiment or as George Floyd and Trayvon Martin. We need to start seeing people and hearts and souls. And when you start to see me as a person, you start to value me. And this is what we're starting to see happening.
So this gives you a chance to expand on this a little bit more, but why is the Tulsa Race Massacre, why is it still significant today? In other words, why does it matter for all of us in society, right? For the events going on today.
Yeah, I think as we drill down even further, we see that it's important because as much as we'd like to think we've changed, we haven't. Right, 100 years later, let's paint a picture for you. Right, as we approach the centennial, right, even in our own state, we've just passed legislation to make it illegal to teach Black history and matters of diversity and on Native American history and women's history. Right, and so as much as we think we're changing, we're not really changing as much as as we think we are. The progress isn't there like we'd like to give ourselves credit for. But it's really important that people of faith make the decision that we won't be silent, that we won't be quiet, that if all of society says we'll act like this isn't happening, we're gonna be Jesus. We're gonna go sit in places and talk to people and expose things that others think are uncomfortable.
So how can we be better than the church of 1921? In other words, what's our role? What's our responsibility? How can we do better today than the church of 1921?
I think this is a start. I think this conversation is a start. I think acknowledgement is first and foremost, but we have to understand that acknowledgement brings about accountability. When I know about it, I've got to do something about it. And I think it starts with acknowledgement, having these conversations, not taking the position that if we don't talk about it, it'll go away. I'll tell you, I'm 38 years old. I've been Black all my life, believe it or not. And the conversation doesn't go away just because you don't want to have it with me. My heart still races when the red and blue lights pull up behind me, or when I'm in the store and a woman clutches her purse as I walk by. And so conversation, I think, is first and foremost. But secondly, it's acknowledging that there is a place for the church to be out front. To be outspoken. I don't think we can preach a gospel of being here for the least, the last, the lost, and not be involved in the conversation of race and culture and diversity in this country. I think it's being not only active in our sanctuary spaces, but being out in our communities. It is being vocal in our school systems, and even not to be political, but in our politics, being mindful. When's the last time any of us ever voted in someone's interest other than our own? All right. One of the most powerful ways we can speak to change, we often vote in a way that keeps things the way that I want it for me. And I don't know if that aligns with what we're called to do. But there are physical, tangible, realistic ways to do that. How many local organizations are we involved with, right? When is the last time that you, as a member of the Springs, took a drive on 36 and Martin Luther King, if you weren't going to the zoo or going to the Omniplex, right? When is the last time that we've had this conversation before on campus. I always find it fascinating that it's easier to get someone who looks like you to go to Africa than I can get them to come on the east side. I can get somebody to go to Kenya before I can get them to come and read at Thelma Parks Elementary. And so for us, it's the relationships, it's the acknowledgement, but it's also working in times of peace when there aren't shootings, when there aren't blatant injustices. All right, You need to understand that if you and I aren't friends in the time of peace, I don't expect you to come to bat for me in a time of war. We've grown accustomed to trying to figure it out on our own. And it shouldn't be like that. But for so long, the church has been silent. We don't hear anything from the church in a lot of these instances. And so we've grown, and when I say we, I speak in a very broad and probably too broad, but in a very broad way of the Black church. I think we've grown to a point of not expecting anything from the white church, so to speak, in moments like this, because in those moments when we expected it and it didn't come, we found ourselves vulnerable, just out there waiting, and it never happened.
Gary, I appreciate your honesty, your integrity, the way that you've convicted me. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing time with us and sharing your own experiences, sharing and representing to a certain extent the communities that you serve, and helping us to see the world through eyes other than our own. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you to Quail Springs. I applaud you for having this conversation. I pray for you as you put your hands to the plow, that you stick with it.
Thank you.